This actually happened in Massachusetts. Like we were in Whole Foods and Wegmans at the time, going into summer 2019 in Massachusetts, and customers started to meet our beer distributors' trucks in the parking lot. And like the beer wasn't even making it to the shelf in the store for a period. And there was this like big ironic shortage of non-alcoholic beer that next summer, and we'd outgrown this big brewery in 10 months, in only 10 months. How can Athletic go head to head with a $50 billion multinational company, let alone multiple of them who are relatively focused on what we're doing? It's because all of them sell over 300 SKUs for the most part, and their focus is so distracted. They have a lot of different priorities. And when their salespeople walk into a store, they have, non-alcoholic beer might be their 57th priority. When an athletic brewing teammate walks into a store, we have one priority.
Bill Shufelt, thank you very much for joining me today. I'm thrilled to have you on to talk about your I'll call it invention or discovery of athletic beer, but the first time I had it, I was just shocked at how good it tasted. And I thought, wow, here's a drink I can drink anytime, and it's low calories. It's a whole new category, as far as I can tell. And so I can't wait for my audience to hear, how does somebody come up with a whole new beverage category? But how you came up with this idea and how you got it off the ground is really inspiring. And that's why I'm really happy to have you on. Thanks so much for joining
Thank
me.
you. Thank you so much, Bob. Really excited to be here.
So our backgrounds are similar because I was also in the financial world as you were. In fact, our companies interacted quite a lot. I was in the equity business and you were at Point 72, I think was the name of it at the time, right?
Yep.
Tell us what happened. How did you come up with this idea? It's quite an idea.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the definition of an accidental entrepreneur. I was definitely, I'm not someone who's hardwired to be a serial entrepreneur. I never had like a desire to jump around jobs, create companies, start something on my own. Athletic was really formed out of a need in my own life, to the point where like I didn't even have a LinkedIn profile at my former job. I was at the company I wanted to be at, and I figured I'd be there the next 25 years and hadn't considered anything else except finance. Except I was about to turn 30 years old. I was 6 months from getting married. I was training for my first ultra marathon. And I was really like thinking about what does the next 10 years and 25 years of my life look like? And, like many normal, modern, healthy adults, I was taking my career more seriously, thinking about my future family, my health, my fitness, my sleep, my goals. Yeah, and starting to run ultra marathons is like kind of a testing my performance. And I realized as I was making those things, the alcohol is kind of a ceiling on all of those categories of my life that I was like increasingly weighting as important in my life. And so I stopped drinking for 30 days towards the end of the summer of 2013. And it was like the biggest life hack I'd ever uncovered. I was sleeping better. I felt healthier. I was performing better every day at work. I used to just survive workouts and make it to the end. I was all of a sudden surviving workouts to like thriving and feeling like I wanted to accelerate the whole time I was working out. And it was like this incredible productivity unlock in my life and this virtuous cycle. And so I never went back. And it's now been 11 plus years since I stopped drinking, but I still loved beer. I love food. I love being social. I still love doing everything I loved to do before I stopped drinking. I'd made this positive life choice, and I really wanted to just be able to like go out to dinner with colleagues, go out to dinner with my wife, enjoy relaxing moments, enjoy sporting events. And the adult beverage world had not adapted for the modern life. And I realized that, the terms disruption get thrown around a lot. There's like, oh, we're disrupting this extremely small piece of software. Um, I was looking to disrupt a 5,000 year habit, which is drinking beer when people are relaxing in society, and get it up to speed of the modern life. And in that, I realized that I could not only have a positive impact in the way I'd had on my own life, like a personal productivity unlock, and health unlock, but really like give people moderate options. And alcohol is a problem in society in a number of different ways. There's 15 million documented alcoholics out there in the world. There's research suggesting alcohol is a big contributor to cancer and heart disease and incarceration. Over 40% of people incarcerated were drunk when they committed their crimes. And so, for the first time, I was looking at my life and realizing, I had this great financial career that was personally satisfying and personally financially rewarding. But if I went down this entrepreneurial path, oh my goodness, I could have a positive impact on tens of millions of people. And that was something I'd never considered in my life is, wow, like Bill Shufelt can have a positive impact on the world. And that got me really excited. And I started to look into this and dive into it. And it's a passion I've not been able to turn off for a second for the past 10 plus years.
So I imagine that there are plenty of other people that have had that realization, and including me. I've noticed all those things, but it wouldn't occur to me that I wouldn't just start drinking ginger ale, which is very high in calories and very sugary and not healthy. And that there's water, and there were lots of different options. But how did you come? I mean, you said that you like beer, and so do I. How was it that you would take a beer and know that there were alternatives like O'Doul's at the time and plenty of other brands, and I tried them all. And they didn't strike me the way your beer struck me when I drank it. How did you get the idea that I can take this category that lots of people are competing in and figure out a new way to do it?
I think so. At the end of the day, the products weren't great, but they weren't that bad if they were better marketed previously. So it was both a product and a marketing challenge. And, there's a very boring shelf of like underdeveloped lagers, call it, on the shelf without any marketing, no flagship brands. And what we really wanted permission at Athletic was we wanted retailers to show this shelf in pride with a variety of beers. When we launched with two beers, an IPA and a golden ale, which was totally new flavor additions to the category, but then also stouts. And we release over 50 beers a year on our website too. So we were bringing a quality and flavor explosion to an otherwise very boring category, which was like culinarily enlightening. But then also on the marketing front, non-alcoholic beer had been one of the most penalty box categories out there.
This show is being brought to you by our sponsor, Truflation. Professional investors and economists, and probably any casual observers, know that government inflation statistics are only an approximation of what real inflation is. Not only that, but the government has a conflict of interest because high inflation can be so damaging to the economy, the deficit, and our $34 trillion in debt. Truflation collects over 13 million pricing data points. Most are updated daily to reveal inflation with precision for asset managers, governments, companies, and the general public. Check them out at truflation.com.
Really painted into a corner for like designated drivers, recovering alcoholics, certain medical conditions, or like very specific occasions. And it was for when you were on premise, out socially, but couldn't drink alcohol. It was when you drank non-alcoholic beer. And so people were painting it as a smaller than the alcohol occasion, where really I looked at my extremely busy, modern, healthy life, and I realized 99% of the time I do not want alcohol. And I want great beer in a lot of those occasions. And so that's kind of where I was going with that. I was like, there is a huge occasion base to this. And I want the culinary experience. I want the social experience. I want everything. And I was very lucky. My wife was in business school at the time. And so like me kind of saying these things out loud led her to grab hold of those ideas and actually say, you have a business idea here. And that helped paint the picture for me as well.
That's really fascinating. Yeah, having somebody who can hear you and respond by, "Do you hear what you're saying? This is really good. This can be a real business." But you had to come up with that idea of that. Almost sounds like you were solving a marketing problem where there already were all these things, and all they had, and I would have been worried that all they have to do is remarket their brands to a different lifestyle or create new ones, and then you would have all this enormous competition. But I think you must have recognized what I did, and that is they weren't quite good enough.
Hmm.
Is that right? And
Yeah,
that's what,
yeah, the flavor, the nutritionals, kind of everything wasn't where it needed to be. And really our one of our most first principles moments was looking at the quality of offerings on the shelf and seeing that there'd been no innovation in 50 years, essentially. The production methods of 99% of non-alcoholic beer when we started were the same production methods that had been used in the post-prohibition era in the 1970s, and really wanted to overhaul that, take non-alcoholic beer production down to the screws and reinvent that. And so I had never brewed a batch of beer in my life before, but went out and got every brewing textbook I could get my hands on, read all those, did 2 years of business planning. But it was really not until I teamed up with our co-founder, John Walker, who is really our technical co-founder and oversees all of our production and supply chain. And what John and I did, who credit to John also, like I talked to hundreds of people about this and there were no other interested parties. John was in New Mexico and moved his family and his 1 year old and 5 year old all the way across the country to Connecticut to homebrew in an empty warehouse on Gatorade jugs with someone he really didn't know. Like we had met one time in person before we started homebrewing together, or he moved all the way across the country. So, but we took it down to the screws. We had an idea of how we wanted to make non-alcoholic beer, but John really reinvented non-alcoholic beer. We did hundreds of trials on Gatorade jugs. We had a fermentation cart with 20 plus experiments going on at any given time, tweaking one variable at a time. And credit to John, who said this was gonna take a long time. We're gonna do it through the scientific method. We're gonna change one variable in every batch every time and see how it reacts. And he also said, we may never launch a product. We're not going to launch a product unless it's great beer, period, not just good non-alcoholic beer. And he's totally lived up to that. Like John is now the most highly awarded non-alcoholic brewer on the planet. And, we've won well over 100 global taste awards. And so credit to him and all the work he did in reinventing that process. Like the company just wouldn't be what it is today without that.
well, I was very grateful to him for giving me a tour of your factory in Milford, Connecticut recently. And that came across. He said that you and he spent 9 months just iterating and reiterating and going through the process over and over until you finally got one where you went, now this could be it.
Yep, for sure. And it got like a little better, a little better. And really, we're 7 years in and we are getting better every day still. And Athletic Brewing has really made pretty singular investments in ongoing quality in the category, where it's a very contract manufactured and outsourced imported category. Athletic Brewing has actually invested hundreds of millions of dollars in standing up the breweries you mentioned. But we have extremely talented brewing and quality teams, like very differentiated investments in our lab and food safety. So it's been a big part of our ongoing quality efforts too. That like we've actually taken the time to build the manufacturing.
Yes, and I've been to many factories through my financial career, and yours was cutting edge, state of the art, really impressive, and how everything was working. He was, I was there one of those days where you were busy producing, and so it was really fun to see. Now, a lot of the work that you did was while you were working at Point 72, right? A lot of the marketing work before you left, a lot of the homework, I
Um,
guess I should say.
some of it, I was just doing general business planning and trying to wrap my head around is this a real idea? Is this a real concept? And you can really only push certain things far enough without doing it full time. And so I was about 2 years into business planning and I'd been doing it in fits and starts, nights and weekends, a very different concept than my day job for sure. And I'd built a really exciting business plan, kind of a white paper on why this is needed in the world, had done a lot of brewing research. But the real work definitely started after I resigned. I thought I knew a lot about brewing and a lot about where this company was going. And I could not have been closer to step one of the journey. But importantly, my wife was very involved in that moment as well. 2 years into business planning, she sat me down at the end of the year. She took me out to our favorite local Mexican restaurant, and I quickly realized it was a bit of an ambush. And she said, I want you, like, I've looked at all the business plans, and she said, I want you to walk in and quit your job on the first day of the year. And I didn't sleep for 2 nights and got really excited about it, and quit my job. Having that household support to go on a journey like this was so important. And I know John, our other co-founder, had that as well.
Absolutely. I actually started an independent research firm, and Point 72 was a client of ours. And it was very similar. I had a similar situation. My wife was enormously supportive and said, "You've got to go for this full time." And that's one of the things that entrepreneurs realize pretty quickly is if you have a job and you come up with an idea and you work nights and weekends and you keep your job, you're never going to be able to actually get going because it's a full-time plus it's a triple time endeavor to launch a company. I'm sure that's what you and when you and I bet when you left your job and started the company, you started saying, "Okay, now I've got my full-time. Where am I going to find all these extra hours now to do all the other stuff that I have to do to get the company going?"
It's it's kind of hard to put into words with someone who hasn't been on an entrepreneurial journey and isn't well resourced. I had no resources. I put my life savings into the company. I didn't start with like a whole management team around me. John and I were doing every single thing of the company, and it's hard to put that into words. Like you have to be ready to do the accounting at midnight on a Friday night, and there just aren't enough hours in the day. And then the alarm goes off at 4 a.m. on Saturday because, like, is it a storm or is someone breaking into the brewery? But the alarm's going off. You got to get in the car and go check. And so it's like it was amazing to build brick by brick, but in that we learned every piece of the business, and I think that served us so well.
That is such an important thing. I did the same thing when I started mine. When you do the Friday night, midnight accounting, when you're big enough and now you have to get somebody to do that, you already know, you know how to ask the questions. And that goes for every one of the other elements of running a business that a lot of, that it's very difficult to go into being an entrepreneur and hire a bunch of people doing all those things and still know the right questions to ask. And that was one of the things that John pointed out as he walked around the factory. He said, I had to learn this part, I had to learn this part, I had to learn this part. And it's really important when you're tightening the screws and designing the factory to have the experience to know it needs to be there, it needs to be connected in a certain way. And I'm sure you found all that
Yeah,
to be
I
true.
was Yeah, I was very lucky. Yeah, and touching on what you just said, I had a co-founder who was also up for the same kind of learning journey and personal challenge that I was embarking on. I totally underappreciated that in the beginning and have enormous appreciation for it now. That John and I have totally complementary skill sets and areas where we wanted to focus in the business. And we both were up for a huge challenge and 110% effort for, 10 plus years. And I think that's really rare. I very often meet groups of co-founders and founders who they either came from the same career or have very similar skill sets. And you've got two or four people with similar backgrounds and similar skills. And I want to be like, guys, you're going to have to figure this out soon. But like, you don't need four of you. You need four different ones of you. And I'm very lucky to John as our co-founder.
It's also much easier. My company eventually I had a partner who was absolutely fabulous, and he was so good at all the things that I didn't like to do and I wasn't very good at, and vice versa. And it reduces all of the friction because you can just have confidence. I don't understand that decision. I don't agree with that decision, but I'm glad I don't have to make it because you made it, and you're
Yeah,
probably going to be right. And I don't need to be. You don't have to. We don't have to give in a long conversation about why you're right, because that's what you're good at. It makes a huge difference. So when you get overlap, you can have much more friction. There can be many smaller points that take up too much time.
for sure. Yeah, we've both been for years been moving very fast, working on our own things, keeping the other person in the loop on everything we're doing. But we've made a lot of progress as a result.
The marketing side was a critical component of the opportunity. And sitting in the financial industry, it doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to understand marketing. I'm dying to hear the innovations that you came up with on the marketing side that helped you develop this brand in a different way and address this much larger market you discussed earlier.
Yeah. So yeah, I came from finance. I would classify myself as very financially, operationally strong, and like an executor. I love to just get things done, and I I did not do much sales or any marketing in my career previously, and thought those things would be very difficult. I quickly discovered was that because I was so passionate about athletic brewing and I knew the future vision of it in the world, like I knew it because I lived the unmet need so personally. Like I knew what problem we were trying to solve. I knew like the ethos and the brand elements I wanted to carry forward. And so like all of a sudden talking about that, the sales, the marketing was really easy for me, like the fundraising. Like I loved having those conversations. I loved having people to talk about the company with. I loved it when people challenged me about the company in fundraising meetings. I did 120 fundraising meetings in 2017. It was extremely difficult to raise money for a brewery in a category that basically didn't exist, had no growth. I had no product to share. It was investors had every reason not to invest in athletic, but we had this amazing group of 70 angels who did. And so I was grateful for that opportunity of the storytelling. And then kind of the same thing in terms of, no one wanted to join up as a brewer. Our co-founder wanted to work with us in retail and distribution. But, hand by hand, talking to a lot of people, opening doors, all of a sudden, we learned a lot about ourselves, shared, like, I had the chance to, like, personally sell the brand to people. I'd say specifically on marketing, like, that is not a core skill set of mine, at least originally. We were really lucky to have a great creative and branding agency in Fairfolk out of Boston, who was a previous friend who reached out to help, and then we ended up working together professionally. But they really helped take what I had in the business plan and what I was conveying personally to the real world, get that on the page, get that on the cans. And one thing they really did a good job of was everything that I was talking about, they helped me like form the onion of the brand basically, where people could peel back a layer of the onion in their brand journey with athletic and be discovering things about athletic that they didn't know like 3 years into their journey with the brand. And so a lot of that ethos and brand character, they really helped me take from within myself and get it out onto the page, I'd say.
Is the ambassador program something that is unique to Athletic Brewing? I have some
Well,
friends
there
who are
are.
ambassadors, and it sounded like a great idea.
So I think that's a demonstration of like how authentic and community driven we are as a company. So right from the start, I wanted to be out there in the world talking about athletic, having fun, putting beers in people's hands and telling them what our company's about. And so I did 75 races that first summer. I'd just bring a cooler, hand out hundreds of beers after a race. And that could be anything from local 5Ks to ultra marathons to Ironmans. And, I thought if I stand in a liquor store with samples of non-alcoholic beer, I might be able to pour 2 to 5 beers an hour. But if I go to a local 5K and people are happy, thirsty, sweaty, having fun, I'll probably be able to hand out 500 beers in a half hour. And that ended up playing out. And I did that all over New England. And but then people also not only got a beer, but they got a blast of my enthusiasm about the company. Like, this is why you're going to love non-alcoholic beer. You don't just have to have, you don't just get to have your beer on Friday night. You can have a great beer every night of the week now. And oh, by the way, like this is what our company is about. Like we're a B Corp. We have this amazing Two for the Trails program, and um, so I think we're putting all that fun out there in the world and being a wholesome brand and kind of naturally, people wanted to be a bit more a part of that. And that's where our ambassador program really stemmed from. I was our customer experience department. I was if you called the company, it went to my cell phone. If you emailed the company, it went to my email. And I was just interacting with customers, either face to face on the weekends or that way. And really, I turned to one of our earliest teammates. I was like, Derek, these emails I'm getting, like these people are incredible. And I'm like, I'm not doing our community service by just like thanking them on email. like we should be doing more with them in the real world. And so we created our ambassador team out of that. And right now it's about 1,500 people, and they're all incredible in their own way. And so that's kind of an example of our like extension into the community, I'd say.
I shudder to think how much more enthusiastic I would have been, or if I could have been any more enthusiastic, if I had actually been handed you one of you handed me one of these
Thank you.
when after a race. That sounds, it's the hand-to-hand combat. It's the personal interactions that creates a core. But 1,500 sounds a little on the small side now that your company has gotten so big. Let's talk a little bit about the expansion and what how people can understand how much bigger you've gotten now.
So, yeah, it's tough to put into words. That first brewery that John and I raised our $3 million angel round to build was a 5,000, it was 8,000 square foot brewery that made 5,000 barrels of beer per year, which we thought was enormous. And, everyone told us we were stupid for like making the investment in the first place, told us we would never fill it. And very ironically, 2018, we couldn't beg anyone to talk to us. It was like the boulder was at a standstill in anything we tried to do, and we were just getting things rolling.
Are
But
you
then as we
talking about
made
supplier, investors, suppliers, large customers, those all of the above?
everything really, like any part of our business, yeah, so like if I went to a retailer, any retailer, there's basically no interest, and I'd sample them, I'd tell them why they need it, why it's different, how non-alcoholic beer is going to grow, and like make hand sales by hand sales. And but over time, as we wrapped up 2018 and we're going into 2019, all of a sudden things started to get easier, and our distributor orders were growing, and we had these very small projections early in 2019, and all of a sudden as we went into the summer, like these projections were going through the roof. And ironically, shipments of beer, so in this actually happened in Massachusetts. Like we were in Whole Foods and Wegmans at the time going into summer 2019 in Massachusetts, and customers started to meet our beer distributors' trucks in the parking lot. And like the beer wasn't even making it to the shelf in the store for a period. And there was this like big ironic shortage of non-alcoholic beer that next summer, and we'd outgrown this big brewery in 10 months, in only 10 months. And we were scrambling to buy more used tanks and get them plugged in for the summer. And so we doubled the brewery that first summer on the market,
Oh, the
and we
footprint
outgrew.
allowed for a doubling of capacity.
Yeah, we just bought bigger tanks and worked longer hours on the canning line. And we jammed these tanks in, and we outgrew it again in 3 months. And so we really knew we were in trouble then. So it was pretty fast out of the gate. Then we bought a used brewery all the way out in San Diego. That was at the end of the day, that ended up being about 50 times the or 40 times the capacity of our original brewery. Um, and so we're building our fourth brewery total now, just 6.5 years into business. We've gone from being about the 10,000th biggest brewery in the country to a top 25 brewer. We're top 10 craft brewery by size in the country now, including all alcoholic and non-alcoholic. But in some states, less than one out of every 10 six-packs of beer sold is an Athletic Brewing six-pack now. Like if you take the state of Vermont, one out of every six packs of beer sold in the state of Vermont is an Athletic Brewing six-pack in 2024. So it's it's been really exciting as we share this like reimagined category with the public, and still awareness is very low overall for the category. Awareness is probably still under 20% of the population. And so, but it's been really fun.
Yeah, I would say 20% sounds low with my friends. I would say a lot of them don't know it. I talk about it a lot. I went to a party, it was a dinner party with probably 30 people, and almost everybody had an athletic beer in their hand. It
Amazing.
was,
I love to
it was
hear it.
really
Thank you.
impressive. I was like, I just went to that company and I saw how they make that beer.
I love it. It's well, I was all summer I was challenging people to make a third of their coolers, if they're at the beach or a barbecue or anything, non-alcoholic beer. And I heard back from people time and time again that they thought they put way too much athletic in their coolers and all the athletic was gone first. And so I think it's really opening people's eyes up to, people, and this is something that happened to me when I stopped drinking. I realized I still loved to be at bars and restaurants. I loved being in those social situations. And actually, it had nothing to do with the alcohol. I just loved seeing my friends and family and eating good food and drinking good beer. And all the better if you didn't have to deal with the hangover or the like being drunk after that. So,
Yeah, I that's it's so you know a lot of people now are know you all because you must be by far, having been in the stock market and having followed beverage companies, including Caroline Levy, who I used to work with and is on your board. I'm pretty aware of how fast beverage companies can grow, and it seems that your company must be the fastest growing beverage company in a very long time. It must be drawing competition, but it seems that you have built a brand that will make it very difficult for competitors. What does the competitive landscape look like, and how's it changing?
and there's a number of like very exciting beverage companies being grown right now in cool categories. I definitely want to shout out Olipop and Poppy. They're doing amazing things, and um, but yeah, it's really fun to discover a totally previously unmet need, and it's a big population out there. And so I think now that Athletic has permissioned the category in many ways. 10 years ago, there wasn't a single flagship beer brand in this category. No one would have ever thought about putting their main beer label in the non-alcoholic category. But now, if you look at the shelf, I think the way we've marketed our products has really greenlit a lot of major brands to come into the category. So you have Heineken, Corona, Guinness, Bud, and on and on. Like essentially all the major beer brands now have come into the category, which is really exciting. A lot of the major regional craft breweries are in the category. And then in total, there's over 150 brands in the category now. Um, but
Wow,
within
that's
that,
shocking to me because they've definitely not gotten to me. I haven't seen. I go, in the stores where you're laid out, Whole
yep,
Foods and liquor stores and beer stores. I just see all you guys, and I don't see any other non-alcoholic beers yet.
yeah. Well, I think that's probably just like reflecting the popularity and the like sales of the items too. Even though there's 150 brands in the category, Athletic is driving about 37% of category growth, and is 20% of all sales. So, as the category leader, and I think that reflects that like we've actually gone ahead and made differentiated investments. Most companies are still making non-alcoholic beer the way it was made for the past 75 years, just with like slightly spruced up marketing and messaging and labels and stuff. Where Athletic has really overhauled it down to the screws and really invested a lot in marketing the category as well. So, this isn't a part-time hobby for us. It's all we do, and it's so I think that's a big differentiator. And um, it to get distributed nationally too is a big investment. It's not like in some food categories, it's like a very preferred route to market to contract manufacturer and have like one major national distributor. In beer, it's really a very fragmented network. We have over 250 distributors, and it's a very fragmented national network. So you really need a big sales team to like stay on top of all that and manage the retailer relationships and everything. So we've invested a lot in not only product marketing, route to market, sales and marketing, but every vertical of our company, which I think does leave a moat behind. You would think optically that, we compete with over three $50 billion companies as a relatively small startup ourselves. But why can Athletic go head to head with a $50 billion multinational company, let alone multiple of them, who are relatively focused on what we're doing? it's because all of them sell over 300 SKUs for the most part, and their focus is so distracted. They have a lot of different priorities. And when their salespeople walk into a store, they have, non-alcoholic beer might be their 57th priority. When an athletic brewing teammate walks into a store, we have one priority. And if we're making a case stack of something, it's going to be our non-alcoholic beer. If we set up a tent at a race, we're talking about non-alcoholic beer. Like it's not like, oh, we're talking about seltzer today, light beer tomorrow, like cheladas the next day. And so even though we kind of have all those things in our portfolio in non-alcoholic form, we're much more focused, I think, than these companies. And so I think that makes a difference.
Well, John also made a point during our tour that really stood out, and he talked about the innovation that you all drive, and the number of SKUs that you all have developed too, although it's all in a single category. Talk about some of that, because I think that also leads to a lot of the competitive advantage that you bring to the table today, and probably sows a lot of future success as well.
Yeah.
And how you go about the innovation.
Yeah. So most of our competition is contract brewed or imported. So very tough supply chains, very inflexible. Like if you're contract manufacturing, you basically forecast on an annual basis, and you have to make very large batch sizes and have like very little recipe flexibility. Because Athletic Brewing owns and operates its own facilities, we have brewing systems all the way down to 3 barrels and as big as 1,500 barrel tanks. And so on an annual basis, we release about 30 to 50 different styles of beer on our website. And so we can really let our team's creativity flex in the different recipes. And I think that's really important to our community of beer lovers. There's kind of like a beer for every occasion, and we can continually excite and delight our customers.
In fact, that is what one of my friends said was a big strength of Athletic, is that I can get 5 different types, and sometimes I'm in the mood for a heavier one, and
Yeah.
sometimes in the mood for a lighter one.
Yeah. Right now, for example, I'm drinking a farmhouse peach beer that we released at the end of the summer.
I think I was able to test that one.
But yeah, we do Oktoberfest, pumpkin beers, stouts, sour beers, radlers, and on and on.
Yep. Yep. It was really fun. One of your employees came up and essentially described how this product saved his family, because he had a number of people that like to drink a little bit too much, and now they are able to be alcohol free and still enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, it's that kind of impact, whether it's one of our teammates or someone in the community. We get hundreds of like really nice, heartfelt emails every week. And I when I started Athletic, and John gave up a nice career too. I left a very sure thing in the financial world, that very low risk, very high floor to that career, and went to a very high risk, high probability of failure industry. And every time we get an email like that or hear a testimonial like that, it is like constantly reaffirming why I made that choice. And just the chance to have like a positive impact like that on one life is worth like more than anything to me, and is really an impact I never thought I'd be able to have on people's lives. So it's really exciting.
It does make a difference, and that's a lot of what I'm trying to do on this channel is talk about the people below the headlines, the ideas that are below the headlines that just incrementally make society better every day. And it is a pretty interesting, idea of yours that has the potential to really change a lot about how people interact and remain healthy. So
Yeah,
it's
I tend to be a big time optimist by nature. John and I have hit a lot of problems along the road. We really like to run at our biggest problems. Usually if something is the scariest thing on our to-do list or the biggest problem, it probably means we should be addressing it first and going right at it. And so we've made a lot of very tough decisions. But in that, like no matter how tough days are, like I'm a major optimist. And if you approach things with a positive mindset, you know, I I generally think all great things are done by people with optimistic outlooks who believe in slightly crazy, improbable things. Like it's really easy to be a pessimist, but as a pessimist, like there is never that really big payoff also.
What were some of those challenges that you ran head on into that looked like insurmountable problems that you figured out a way around or figured out how to solve?
I mean, they're basically daily and almost still to this day. So I'd say one of our toughest moments was like really early on after we finished building the brewery and launched and procured a bunch of ingredients. Like we did not have much money left over as a company and we were running very lean. Um, and we had gathered our first national shipment on a like our first full truckload order. Most of our orders had been single pallet orders, where a full truckload is 21 pallets. And so we'd been making all these small orders in our first summer on the market. And we had our first full truckload order about ready to go out, which was a big deal for us, um, like way more than a normal month of revenue. And John kind of grabbed me in the brewery as I was walking through, and he's like, I just don't feel great about this batch. He's like, there are things I want to do differently. And he's like, I know what the fix is. It's going to take some time, but I think we got to destroy this beer. And so we made that tough quality decision. We didn't think it was our best product. We didn't want to put it out to the world. And we destroyed a very expensive truckload of finished beer and disappointed that retailer in a big way. But I think at the end of the day, it sent the right message to the retailer that when you get a shipment from Athletic Beer, it's going to be our best. It's always going to be our best. And that's something we've tried to live up to with our community ever since. And so that was an example of like a really big challenge.
It is a fantastic example. That really is. And one, did the retailer put you in a penalty box of any sort?
They understood. Yeah, we're just honest with them. We're like, I definitely believe in really good communication. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it depends a little bit. Sometimes the customer will get angry and then down the road, 3, 6, 9 months, the relationship is stronger in many of those cases. You know,
Oh,
in my
absolutely, for sure.
yeah, in my experience with clients, it's much better to do the right thing, turn the lemon into lemonade, pay
For
attention
sure.
and fix it
Yep.
properly. So it's good that you didn't have a penalty box issue, except for the big hole in your income statement for that period of time. That must have been,
Yeah.
if that was your biggest shipment, that must have been a one painful write-off.
Yeah. And at the same time, it was not only destroying product, but procuring more equipment and everything. So definitely expensive lessons all along the way in all different forms.
And what are the big challenges now for the next year?
I think as we scale, it's we're going against ever bigger competition. It's staying true to our roots. Staying really community oriented. Our goal is to build a great long term company, provide great long term jobs to our teammates, and continue building that way. So really staying true to our roots and staying focused. There's so many shiny objects out there. So I feel like the more we stay focused and do what we're great at, the better we'll be. But on any given day, there's all sorts of things that are challenging. And, I really like strategic challenges, route to market challenges, things like that, like working through problems with a trade partner, trying to solve their needs. The things that tend to stress me out the most are people challenges. Like I care so much about our teammates and their fulfillment, their opportunity. And so like I definitely feel those more personally from our teammates. But yeah, all in all, not too much tends to keep me up at night. I really run very hard at the day's challenges, work incredibly hard, but I'm a big believer in the head hitting the pillow very heavy at night also.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. I realize that this display that I have, I've been blocking.
Oh my goodness, thank you. Yeah, that's one of my favorites right there.
It is indeed. Me too. Um, Well, Bill, it's been so great having you on. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm really happy that my audience, hopefully none of my audience has ever even heard of athletic beer, so that now they can be motivated to go get some. Certainly that can't possibly be possible because so many
Oh,
people I
thank you
know
so much.
already know it and like it.
Oh,
But I'm so
thank you
glad to
so
have you
much.
on.
Yeah, if
And
anyone wants to try to find it, we have a store finder on our website that's super easy to use to find beer near you. So thank you so much.
that's what I was going to ask. Great. Well, terrific. Well, thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
You too. Appreciate you having me on, Bob. Thank you.
Hey, if you like this clip, please hit the subscribe button. You might also want to check out some of the clips I've posted with my many other guests. My interviews all address the simple question, how screwed are we? We ask experts about the problems that make Americans so pessimistic today, but we also explore why there's never been a better time to have been born than today. Join us for perspective on today's challenges and opportunities.